Welcome to this explainer. When we think about miracles in ancient texts, our minds usually go straight to the blockbuster stuff, right? Parting seas, raising the dead, feeding thousands of hungry people. But the event we're diving into today, it's completely different. It's so weird, so quiet, and honestly, seemingly so unnecessary that we've just got to put on our detective hats and take a much closer look.
Just listen to this incredibly bizarre instruction from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 17. The temple tax collectors have just approached Simon Peter asking for payment, and Jesus turns to Peter and says, "Go to the sea, cast in a hook, and take the first fish that comes up, and when you open its mouth, you will find a coin." I mean, put yourself at this crime scene. It's an oddly specific, almost baffling set of instructions, isn't it?
Okay, let's dive into this. Why a fish's mouth? Seriously, think about it. Jesus healed with words. He multiplied bread. He literally calmed raging storms. Those are direct, straightforward solutions to massive problems. So why orchestrate this ridiculously complex chain of events just to pay a tiny little tax? Well, today we are going to unpack the multi-layered, absolute literary and theological genius hiding just beneath the surface of this text.
Part 1. An oddly specific miracle. To even begin making sense of this, we have to look at the actual nature of the miracle. When Jesus multiplied bread or healed the sick, it was to solve an urgent crisis, right? But this was definitely not an emergency supply to solve some desperate lack. This highly specific, deeply symbolic instruction strongly suggests a deliberate revelation. He wanted Peter to learn a really profound lesson. And to figure out exactly what that lesson was, we've got to uncover a hidden piece of context.
Which brings us to part 2, the financial plot twist.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the massive plot twist it reveals. We so often picture Jesus and the disciples as these completely destitute wanderers, but historically and textually speaking, they actually had shared financial resources. John tells us outright that Judas kept a money bag. Luke notes that wealthier benefactors, people like Mary Magdalene and Joanna, actually supported their ministry financially. Plus, they traveled a ton, requiring ongoing provision. Heck, at the Last Supper, the disciples naturally assumed Judas was just stepping out to buy supplies. Carrying and spending money was completely normal for them.
So, because they had these funds, they almost certainly had enough cash on hand to pay the small temple tax. And if they already had the money sitting right there in Judas's bag, well, the emphasis of this entire story dramatically shifts. The miracle wasn't about obtaining money because they were broke. It was entirely about how the money was obtained. Jesus intentionally bypassed the normal, everyday human systems they already had in place.
Moving on to part 3, proving divine sonship.
So what was the real motive here? Well, it was all about identity. Right before sending Peter out to the sea, Jesus asks him this really pivotal question. From whom do the kings of the earth take customs or taxes? From their sons or from strangers? Peter answers, from strangers. And Jesus replies, then the sons are free. Jesus is literally declaring himself exempt from the temple tax. Why? Because he is the Son of God and the temple is his Father's house. A son doesn't pay a tax to fund his own Father's house.
Think about the contrast here. If Jesus had just told Judas to pay the tax from the group's purse, it would have communicated the exact wrong theology. Observers would just think, oh, Jesus is just another subject of the temple, funded by earthly donations. But by completely disconnecting the payment from their normal resources, Jesus proves his divine sonship. He makes it crystal clear. He doesn't fund his Father's house from a human money bag.
Part 4. Peter, Judas, and money. And this brilliantly illustrates a fascinating, almost haunting subplot running quietly beneath the text. Look at Judas. He's the one who normally handles the money bag. He relies on human systems, accounting, bookkeeping. And as we all know, his relationship with money ultimately leads to a devastating spiritual failure. But then, on the other hand, we have Peter. He gets sent out with absolutely zero money, relying entirely on obedient trust in Christ's word, and he literally retrieves wealth directly from creation. It's such a stark contrast. One disciple holds the purse and falls. The other trusts God directly and witnesses miraculous provision.
And the sheer nature of that miraculous provision, it is mind-boggling when you actually break it down. Just stack the layers of hidden knowledge required to pull this off. First off, Jesus has to know exactly where a particular fish is swimming in the vast Sea of Galilee. Second, he has to know that this specific fish has literally swallowed a coin. And third, he knows with absolute 100% certainty that out of all the fish in the sea, Peter's hook is going to catch that exact fish first.
Guys, this goes so far beyond simply multiplying a few loaves of bread. This text is showcasing providential governance at its finest. It is pure, omniscient orchestration. Jesus is quietly demonstrating supreme, sovereign control over the absolute minutiae of human circumstances.
Which leads us to part 5. Creation acknowledges its king.
To really grasp the grand reveal here, we have to look at the where of this miracle. In ancient biblical symbolism, the sea isn't just, a body of water. It frequently represents chaos, the nations, the untamed world, and the vast unknown. Yet here, that wild, untamed world is actively yielding tribute to Christ. In the Gospels, the temple system had become so corrupted with commercialization and dirty politics. So it is incredibly profound that God completely bypasses that corrupted religious machinery to provide the temple tax directly from the sea, from creation itself.
And this creates such a powerful echo of the old Exodus stories. Think of manna falling from heaven, water bursting out of a completely dry rock, or quail just showing up in the wilderness. In all those historical events, God's people received impossible provision from totally unexpected places. By pulling a coin from a fish, the text is signaling that the God who once ruled that wilderness provision is present once again, commanding nature with the exact same authority.
And let's not forget who Jesus actually sent to do this: Peter. Peter was a fisherman before he dropped everything to follow Jesus, right? So Jesus is temporarily sending him back to his old job, but with a major twist. It's this beautiful, gentle reminder to Peter: hey, the sea that once fed you naturally now obeys me supernaturally. Your old world is still entirely under my authority.
There's also a really deeply personal detail hidden in the math of this story. The coin Peter found in that fish's mouth was a single stater coin. Now, why does that matter? Because a stater was the exact, precise amount required to pay the temple tax for exactly 2 people, Jesus and Peter. So the crucial point is how Jesus chooses to actually use his power. He tells Peter they are exempt from the tax, but then he says, nevertheless, lest we offend them. He demonstrates this immense, universe-ruling authority over creation while simultaneously limiting himself in total humility just to keep the peace. He completely avoids any unnecessary spectacle or protest. He submits to a system he is infinitely above, and he lovingly brings his friend Peter along under his provision.
Which brings us to the ultimate question. After synthesizing everything we've just uncovered about this incredibly bizarre, oddly specific chain of events, was this miracle truly unnecessary?
Well, practically speaking, yeah. It was completely unnecessary. They had a money bag. Judas could have just paid the tax collector and been done with it. But theologically, absolutely not. It is absolutely loaded with meaning precisely because it was practically unnecessary. Look, if they had been completely broke, we would all just say, oh, God provided because they lacked.
But because they already had the funds, the lesson here is unmistakable. As our source material beautifully summarizes, God provides to reveal who he is, not because he must. This isn't a story about balancing a budget, folks. It is a story about identity, authority, humility, and the quiet, breathtaking sovereignty of the Son of God operating just beneath the surface of everyday life.
Which leaves us with a really profound question to reflect on as we wrap up this explainer. If the creator of the universe can coordinate a single fish and a single coin just to make a quiet point to a fisherman, where might hidden sovereignty be operating beneath the surface of your own ordinary life? What seemingly unnecessary details might actually be a deliberate revelation just waiting for you to cast a hook? Thanks so much for joining me, and keep looking beneath the surface.